Hey guys, it's Lynn here, back again to do another video. Oh my gosh, it is snowing so much outside here in Washington, and I'm just like looking out the window in amazement with how much snow we have gotten over the weekend and over the week, and it's just like winter wonderland here in February. It's so odd. So anyways, I am back again to do another story time, and this time I'm actually going to be telling two stories. So the topic of these stories is actually both very, very similar, just in the aspect that they are both about me making costumes for other people. So with story number one, it's actually about me when I was commissioned to do a costume for someone else. And then story number two is when I was helping a friend as kind of like a gift to do a costume for her. So let's get into this story time. Okay, so the first story I'm going to talk about was, gosh, I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It was quite a while ago. And it was, had to do with a kind of mutual friend that I knew. So my friend had an ex-boyfriend and his group of friends, I knew his friends, like if that makes sense. So we were what we call con friends. So if you guys know what convention friends are, they're kind of friends that you don't really see very much throughout the year. But then when convention season comes, you typically like meet up at conventions and like hang out with them and, you know, get to spend time with them and stuff. This happens a lot more as you get older because, you know, people move and people have lives and have jobs and school and whatever else. So sometimes conventions are the only time that you get to see your friends because it's the only time they're actually taking time off of work and their busy schedules to hang out with you for a weekend. So in this particular group of friends, there was one guy who, just slightly younger than me, really awesome person. He had found out through a mutual friend that I made cosplay costumes. So mostly I just made my own cosplay costumes, and then if my friends needed help doing something or if we were doing a group costume, sometimes I would help them do theirs as well. And so he had this costume in his head that he wanted to do for the upcoming Sakura-con that year. And he had asked me if I could actually make it for him and he would pay me. So it would be a commissioned work. This was the very first time I had ever done like an actual commission for someone. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is like a big job, because when you're helping someone out with something, it's not that much pressure. Like they want it to look good and, you know, they trust you. But when you're doing an actual commission and there's like money involved, you know, people want their money's worth. And also kind of put me in a weird position because I wasn't sure like how much he was looking to spend and like how much I should be charging for this. And back then I didn't really understand how commissioners worked. Like, do they charge hourly? Is there like a base rate? Like, how do you pay for materials? Like all this kind of stuff. So I had to kind of learn along the way. So I did a lot of research online, and let me just start off the story with how I made the costume. So his costume that he wanted to go as was a white mage from Final Fantasy. Now, I am not a huge Final Fantasy fan. Like, I played some of the games. Like, I know the main characters. Played Kingdom Hearts, so I know the characters from that. But he had asked me to do this costume, and he showed me a bunch of pictures, you know, sent me exactly what he had in his mind of what he wanted. So if you guys have never seen this costume, a white mage is pretty much just a giant white robe that doesn't have sleeves. It's done like poncho style, and then it has a hood as well. The bottom of the costume is lined with a bunch of very large red triangles. So think of like the trim of the white robe is just red triangles. So in my head, I was like, wow, this costume's super easy. I can totally do this. And I quoted him a price and he agreed to it. So I think originally I had quoted him maybe like $60 or $80. And looking back then, I was very dumb because I kind of just guessed. I had no clue how much the materials were going to cost me. I had no clue how much time this was going to take me. And in my head, I just saw simple costume. Oh, that means that the materials won't cost a lot and it won't take me very much time. Mistake number one, because this was stupid to assume. I should have done my research before I actually quoted a price. So going into this costume, and quick note here, I live in a very tiny apartment. I live in an apartment that's like 600 square feet or less. And if you guys have ever had to make a very large costume, a robe is a lot of fabric. So not only do you have to buy fabric that has a specific width because you're making something so wide and so big, but you also have to be able to lay it out for the pattern. So I actually custom made a pattern at home. And I used a lot of tutorials I found online about making robes and how other people had made their white mage robes and like all this stuff. So went to Joann's, bought the materials for it, got everything I thought I needed. I had kind of like done the measurements, made the pattern at home, was like kind of estimating how much fabric I'd need. It was all good. So, and you guys are gonna hear me do a lot of deep sighs because just like remembering this story is like remembering a train wreck. Like every single thing that happened went wrong. So the one issue I had was that my friend lived about an hour away. So he had come down once to hang out and do the measurements. And then after that, it was kind of like I was on my own until he actually got the costume. So bring all the materials back, start sewing it, start putting it together. And then the first thing I realized, because I was stupid, is that when you're making a very large costume out of white fabric, white is, light passes through it a lot easier than like darker fabrics or textured fabrics. So like I had used a very nice white kind of like cotton blend. So not like a super cheap cotton, but one that was a little more inexpensive. And when I had put the robe on myself, and then I'd also put the robe on my boyfriend so I could kind of see it like coming together and making sure it was draping correctly. But when you put your arms up, you could see straight like your entire body silhouette in the costume, which I was like, no, this is gonna look terrible in pictures. So I realized I was gonna have to go back to the fabric store and buy twice as much white fabric because I had to make a liner for it. So I was like, well, this is great. I was not expecting this. So I go back to Joann's and buy the fabric. And as I'm doing this, I suddenly realized that now that I have bought literally like 16 or more yards of fabric, like I think I ended up probably buying around 20 yards of fabric. It was just nuts. Now that I've bought so much, I am not making any money on the costume for making it, because what you should be doing is when you're doing a commission work, you should be estimating hourly how much you want to charge. So don't think of it as like a project where you're just charging one price. You have to think about, okay, how much are materials going to cost? How much time is it going to take me to make this? And then for time-wise, you need to be charging like an hourly rate. So if like materials are like $50 and then you work 20 hours or something on this costume, at, you know, $10 an hour or whatever, like that's how you would charge it. So it'd be like $250 total. I did not do that. So after my second trip to a Joann's, I come home and now I'm like freaking out because I've dug myself into this hole where I need to finish making this costume. And at the end of it, I'm not going to make any money because I have literally broken even on materials already. So I think I had spent $70 something on materials. So my boyfriend urges me to just contact my friend, be totally honest about what happened, and just explain that I'm gonna have to charge him more. So I do that, and of course the reaction I get is his very much disappointment because he did not want to spend that much money on a costume. So half of it is my fault for totally quoting the wrong price, and the other half is his fault for expecting me to make a very large costume for almost no money. Because if you're having someone commission you a costume, it's probably going to cost over $200. I don't think I've ever seen a commissioned costume that was less than $200 because it cost them a lot of time, a lot of their free time to make the actual cosplay costume. It's just something you have to take into consideration. So this costume ended up taking me a really long time to make. I think it ended up taking me over a month, and that was because all the triangles that line the bottom of the costume, I had to make a pattern for them. I had to do a ton of math to figure out how many triangles can I fit at the bottom so that they'll, you know, be spaced evenly. And then I had to do trim on each of them. And then I had to put them on the costume so they had like a nice embroidered finished edge. Just the triangles themselves, I was having like a emotional breakdown at home because I'm like, I don't want to make this anymore. It's too hard. It's taking me so much time. When I had talked to my friend, I ended up asking for more money because I pretty much said, like, at this point, I've only bought the materials, the costume's not even finished, and I have weeks of work to do. And I'm sorry, but I just have to charge you more. So I ended up charging, I think, $40 or $50 more. So in the end, I only made like $50 from making this costume that took me a month. So it was 100% not worth it. And the story gets worse. So I finally finished this costume. I put it on my boyfriend, like looking at it and like, okay, awesome. Hood looks good, costume looks good. There's like a tie in the middle. It just, everything came together very well. So I contact my friend, I have him come down, you know, he lives an hour away, tries it on, he likes it, it's all good. Well, I think he was a little more frustrated with the costume than he let on because, for one, we all went to the convention together and I did not see him once. He didn't contact me. He didn't say anything. I didn't run into him there. It was just a really awkward experience. I was kind of like disappointed because I was like, that was my hard work, like making that costume, and I really wanted to see it like in action. But at the same time, I think he was upset that I ended up having to charge him more. By the end of this, I think the costume, I want to say, was like $140 is what I charged, which for a commission costume is like way too low. But I didn't want to charge too much because I already felt bad. So didn't talk to him then. I ended up having a falling out with him a while after that, and like we don't really speak to this day. So I don't know if that was part of it or if that was like something else. It's just such an awkward story. I think back to it. It makes me a little upset because I feel like in a way I got taken advantage of, but at the same time, it was also kind of like my own dumb behavior. Like, sometimes you just have to know when to stand up for yourself and be like, hey, you know, my time and effort is worth money, and I'm sorry if you don't want to pay that much money, but then again, you're asking me to do a very large project for you, so, you know, things like that, that's how it works. Okay, so on to story number 2. This story is actually from probably about 4 years ago when my group decided to do Disney princesses as costumes. I was so excited to do this because I love Disney princesses. At the time, I had very dark hair that was pretty much black, and so I was like, ooh, I want to go as Jasmine. So one of my friends in the group wanted to go as Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and she wanted to go in her provincial outfit, which is like a white shirt and like a blue dress that kind of has like an apron style top and then like a little tie apron in the middle. So it's a really easy costume. However, she had asked me if I could help her make it. So she had offered to buy all the materials for it, and then I would actually make the costume for her. Because I was so excited about doing Disney princesses, I immediately said yes. I was really close friends with her. I was just really excited to be like a part of something and be a group, even if I had to do more work. So I had her come over. Luckily, she lived very close, so we were like collaborating on this costume like multiple times for a few months. And we went to Joann's together. I helped her get discounts on everything to buy the materials, because if you guys have ever been to Michael's or Joann's, you can use the coupons, but you can only use like 1 or 2 coupons per order. So the trick is, if you go with friends or like with someone you know, you can have each person do each coupon with like an order. If you split it up, just like pretend you don't know them and like stand in line or whatever together. So I helped her save a lot of money. I helped her pick out the right materials. I told her how much was going to be needed, all that. She paid for it. So then comes my part where I had her come over. You know, I took her measurements, made an actual pattern, and I just kind of looked at what people had done online and kind of looked at the pictures. And what I always found to be really helpful too is like, if you're making a pattern for someone, you can ask them to bring like a shirt or a top that fits them really well. and that's like old, so like maybe like an old worn t-shirt or something, have them bring it over. And you can also deconstruct an old shirt and create a pattern from that. So I kind of like use a bunch of different techniques. So I sewed the dress, and I have her come and try it on like as I'm going, so that's really helpful for all of you guys that have ever sewed without a pattern. The number one thing is that you want to make sure it fits their body perfectly, their bust, their waist, their hips, like all the ratios need to work for them, not like for a model. So it ended up being one of my very favorite costumes I ever made. I was so proud of it. I was so happy the way it turned out. It just looked really cool. It looked awesome on her. I also helped her do her hair and makeup the morning that we went to the event together. So we had a group that was me as Jasmine, her as Belle, and then we had Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, so Sleeping Beauty, and we also had Cinderella. So there was like us 4 princesses. It was an awesome day. We took tons of pictures together, wandered around, just had a really good time. One of my very favorite things we did is that at the hotel that we were staying at, we took these pictures, and it actually started off with my friend as Sleeping Beauty, where she was like laying on the bed after like walking around the convention for like all day long. So she's like laying on the bed like this, like in her Sleeping Beauty outfit, and I thought it was funny, and I took a picture, and I'm like, haha, you're like sleeping, like Sleeping Beauty's sleeping on the bed. And then it turned into all of us taking pictures of us going like this on the bed and like doing the Sleeping Beauty pose like in our costumes, because we just thought it was so funny. So flash forward to maybe a year or two later, and we had talked about doing Disney princesses again, mostly because my Jasmine costume I made just did not work well. I had to make harem pants. The harem pants didn't fit the way I wanted them to. I couldn't figure out how to change them. I kind of like gave up. So in the future, we had talked about doing Disney again, and I was gonna just do a different princess. So my friend had come over and we were hanging out, and she was like mentioning that she was selling something to a friend and she had to send her a picture of it. And I was like, what are you selling to this friend? And she said, I'm selling my Belle costume to her. And immediately my heart sank, and I was so like, wait, what? And I was trying to ask her without saying anything rude or being mean, but just like, oh, why are you selling that? Are you going to wear it again? And she said, I just really need money right now. And she saw the picture of me wearing it at the convention, and she's like interested in it for herself. And I was just so heartbroken and upset. I don't know if you guys have ever had like a friend make something for you, but it's really special. Like regardless if they charge you or not, like if they're doing something for the benefit of you and like, creating something that takes them a lot of time and effort, to just turn around and sell it, and like not even be secretive about it, but just like straight up tell the other person like, yeah, I'm selling this to someone else, even though you put your love and hard work and effort into it, made me so sad. And I was like really shocked. I brought it up to our other friends, like our friends that also knew her, and kind of told them the situation, and they were like, are you kidding me? You didn't say anything. Like you should have said something like, hey, don't sell my costume that I made for you. That's messed up. Especially because I hadn't charged her to like make the costume. So it was more of like a gift, even though she had bought the materials. I had spent all this time and effort like creating the pattern, creating the costume itself. And I was just so shocked. Unfortunately, this story ends the same way the first one does, which is I don't really talk to her or see her anymore. Not that this story has anything to do with that. That's kind of like a lot of other stuff that happened. But I think it kind of goes to show you that if someone does something like this, like if they treat you like this, or they kind of like pull a stunt like this, like that's not okay in a friendship. That's not okay to sell something that someone has created for you out of the goodness of their own heart, and like spending their time and effort to do that. I don't know. It just, every time I think back, it just really shocks me. I'm not really sure. Like, I understand if you're really broke, like everyone our age kind of like goes through those phases where they're really broke because of school, or maybe they don't have a job or something like that. But don't sell things people make for you. It's weird. It's impolite. And it also makes the other person feel bad, because it's like, wow, all that hard work and effort I put into making this doesn't matter now because you just sold it. So Yeah, not a great story. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy these stories, like all my crazy whatever stories I talk about. I always know I like to hear other people's weird stories, so this is just mine. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, go outside and play in the snow while we have it. Go make a snowman, or just stay inside and drink hot chocolate and be all like comfy and cozy, which is probably what I'm gonna do. So anyways, I will see you guys next time for another story time or rant or whatever I'm gonna do that day. So anyways, I will see you guys later.